Hi there.
Right channel.
Yes, channel. Hello, Nick. We are just going to wait a couple minutes, maybe, for the others to join as well, and then would be cool to have an intro round, maybe a quick one. In the meantime, George, I'm responding to your question in the chat as well because it's actually good questions for everyone. Like the flower, the crypto economics flower is from a really good paper by Sherman, Wojmgier, and Zargam. That's actually also the starting point for the token engineering consilience library that this group has taken initiative of, and there you can find I'll just link those. Hi Matt, welcome. Look who I brought in. Yeah, you recognize.
Yeah, like
you met
you are a good pillar. I know that. Hello, George.
No,
Very nice to see you here.
we were predetermined to cross paths with George, obviously. There's just so much resonance going on. Sean made it. Perfect. Hello, Sean. Sean
Hey,
is
everyone.
one of our most active token engineers, always in the trenches and always sharing with the community. Juan, welcome. Juan is one of the stewards. He's leading the Graviton working group. He's a steward of the Graviton working group where it's all about conflict resolution. Yes. Steph is from Motion DAO. DanceTech, and they're creating their own DAO on Near at this moment, and they've been following along the ecosystem value flows creation as well. I'm just introducing everyone as they move in because we have George here, and he will give a short intro as well to himself. I don't know if you hear it from my voice. Manu is also very active in Token Engineering Commons and in multiple working groups, and he's also providing a practice session based on the capabilities approach. Maybe George knows that. So, and we have a few newcomers this evening, maybe coming for the Token Engineering Consilience Library. I don't know. Welcome. Are you going to share, Jeremy?
Share what? Is there a specific invitation or just say hello?
No. Say hello, and if you want to share what brought you here, please. And if not, it's okay to just hear along.
Yeah. So I was just first answering the question to myself, what the fuck is the Omega Working Group about? So there's I noticed I have some particular curiosity, and then I found some stuff and thought, okay. Cool. All right, I'm down for that, and especially across sort of borders and boundaries. Nice. Seems very relevant. So that's what I'm doing here.
Welcome. So cool. Tonight's gonna be a good session. I think 1 hour won't be enough. So, and tonight is also about token engineering ethics, and me now as a George. Many have joined. Maybe you give a short intro, also the venue where we met just last week, and your your research basically brought you here. Would you like to share a bit?
Yeah. Well, thank you for inviting me. I tried to catch up with some of your documents, and I feel I'm really very impressed by the work I feel that it's very important, not only for token engineering, but the Omega, the work around the focus groups, and it's very trailblazing for the whole global ecosystem of transformation, I mean social transformation, because the issues that you are addressing, they are widely unknown, like the difference between the consequences and the unintended
Yeah.
consequences of tokens, and how rapidly you can learn about that gap. That's in somewhere one of the documents I read that we all have to catch up with that. But the truth is that nobody can uh, catch up. Nobody can keep track
Yeah.
of that alone. So that's why I am attracted to the group, because my middle name is collective intelligence. I mean, I've been a researcher
Yeah.
of self-organizing collective intelligence for 30, 40 years, and I'm totally excited about what is happening nowadays when the large and multiple social movements for profound change need the kind of enabling infrastructures, tools that DAO, blockchain, Web3 can offer to them. So my research, the research of my uh, Center of Action Research, is focused on enlivening large scale systems change. And that wouldn't be possible without the meeting of the social movements, regenerating agriculture, regenerating education, regenerating everything, all social institutions on one hand, and on the other hand, the people who are working with technologies. This too needs to come together, and that's my passion. That's the focus of my generative action research. And for this session right here, I am here in a learning mode. So mostly just listening, and if and when the question of learning society, deliberately developmental organization comes into focus, then I may have something to contribute. Otherwise, I'm just listening. And thank you again
Oh,
for the invitation.
thank you, George. I hope we will have you along. And also, your intro question in the chat was basically remind me again, what is the process around focus groups? And we started this with the rough idea that we wanted to cherish and nurture the diversity that we have in token engineering. And this crypto economics flower that you saw is basically the starting point where we started sensing that that is where the value is. Um, the and basically that was it, if you will. We started researching Ethos. We had a community survey where we already thought, okay, the responses are not big enough because our community is rather small. So what is a better method? How can we find out this question? How come that so many people across the world with different worldviews find their ways to token engineering, and they find they find a common language, or they're very much motivated to do so? And that diversity question or fascination grew even bigger, where we realized it's not about really backgrounds, nationalities, where people live, but really also how they feel themselves, how they sense. And interestingly, we have quite a few, if you take it as a sample size, considerably many neurodiverse participants in token engineering. It's not a surprise to me because many of the founders of token engineering are literally polymaths who are functioning very well, if you will. But that's what brought us together. And in the beginning, we had Lydia, who is a peace researcher, and she helped us with these input, basically methods from social science. And I had mentioned to you, George, I feel always like epistemological trespasser, or that's what we call when we have to move into domains where we are no experts, but we know that we need input from there. We go and try to connect to people who are from that background, and what we do is really to show the potential of what is here, and hope they come along to the ride. And Lydia, at the very least in the beginning, she helped basically come up with the focus groups. And as I mentioned, we just did one, and one focus group with token engineers who are in the trenches, who are active, and also who are in projects that are decentralizing, so who feel those decentralization pains, if you will. And for example, Sean was also one of the participants of that first focus group. If you want, or if anyone also from the new participants now, I'll share this again, the link. But this is the one and only that we did until now. We felt how that could work. I wouldn't say it was conducted perfectly, but as a trespasser, we did a good enough job to actually find out some principles that we can say these are token engineering principles that we hear, or that we can recognize from a question that is really tough, like how do you deal in situations where you have an ethical dilemma as a token engineer. There was, for example, situations where the show must go on. In a sense, you have to deliver. You committed to a project. They had you on board as a token engineer. You have to deliver on one hand, and on the other hand, for example, knowing that the design or that one had gotten enough input to design or to create the or even near you can actually feel the ethical dilemma of getting into a community, dropping a design, and then moving away without having been able to share with the community the tools and the knobs and everything that they are going to actually take care of after you have left, etc. So these can be found in the video call, chat, mirror board. But from that, what we created is the extraction of those ethical principles, and also suitable with those basically practice sessions from the full experts in Omega who really care for the underlying question, and also who are deep in researching for methods and frameworks that can be suitable. For example, the hosting of multiple different worldviews. That's something that Fabian wrote in last rewarding, developing a practice set. Durgas, I don't know if he joined, but he's definitely he's the person who put in spiral dynamics into TE philosophy. So I am sure you will have a good get to know each other when the two of you meet. Maybe you would want to join those sessions as well in their preparation, for example. The same. Or everybody facilitated are the ones who said, okay, we're committing and we're going to make those practice sessions useful and available so that token engineers and people participating in token economies can learn about what that means, how those situations emerge, and how do you recognize those situations, and so on. Good. That was it. So we went through this process once, and I would say we could do it again. But I would really love for social scientists to participate, because I can imagine that you could be doing also someone like Lydia, people with active research could make so much more use of the data, and likely are also incentivized, if you will, and also capable, right, to make those focus groups and facilitate them, and also document those focus groups, that they're properly conducted, the data is taken care of, and so on. So that's the topic. And one more thing, maybe then we can have a round of where each one can add what you're currently hearing, and whatever that triggers. But also the next question, or the next step, would be to continue. As I mentioned, we have quite a lot to do now as facilitators, or as the people who could pick up. But we would also love to continue with the focus groups. And from the start, we have focus groups topics that we had collected. You see them here. Basically, the life cycle going through a token economy life cycle, if you will, what type of and that goes well with the Kinefin framework, I think. That was an idea. Then structures of communication, learning society. I mean, a lot. This space isn't going to it is creating standards, but de facto standards that emerge through experimentation and through sharing, and that goes so fast that literally people even in the know are surprised about things that take off. For example, NFTs surprised everyone, while everyone was in the trenches of this DeFi craze that started in 2020 and is still continuing. Protocols are coming up with innovations every 6 months, and those are step change innovations. So the token engineering society definitely needs to be a learning society. And Nick and others here are also very caring about that aspect. Then, of course, diversity. As I had mentioned, it has many dimensions, many interesting dimensions. Those are the topics that we have collected. What we could do is we can go through them and exchange what interests you, what you think is important from the participants, to decide maybe what should be the next topic we take on. And for let me see who's for George. Basically, that could be an overview of the topics that we had until now, and also maybe George, feel free to share anything when you see resonance or when you see methods that we could use that you have applied and seen applied before. So yeah, that would be the next 40 minutes we could dive into, and at the end I hope we have then picked up a topic for the next focus group. George has a good overview. Lydia unfortunately didn't make it, but Dorgadas is here, so I think it will be a good round. Would anyone want to add something before we move on? I always wait until it becomes uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I add some ideas into topic bucket in the agenda planning. These are like super like rough ideas, not very concrete and well thought for now, but it may be go to somewhere. Maybe I would like to share some of them.
Yes, go ahead.
So one is that maybe we can create a research series about what how the token engineering parameters affect our moral behaviors. So for example, while we are defining token economics, we are defining is mostly as incentive design as well. So how those incentivization affect our moral behaviors. For example, let's say uh, like one token governance, how would it affect our behaviors? Or if there is like two token governance, like reputation tokens, is it affecting our moral behaviors? Kind of research. Maybe it will be nice to see to my side.
So that's something that I'm working on with my with the Consilience side of the picture to show this is the biggest picture, and then within I think it's what I'm calling Principle 3 in the Consilience library right now. There's what happens if you just have the happens as a result of us making those kinds of decisions. So one of the connecting points that Manu and I are going to be digging for me. So I'm going to be examining sort of morals and ethics in a really deep way, which of the token engineering.
And also this will be like this can be research through very interdisciplinary lens. For example, we can discuss how the centralized agencies of today, like central banks, is creating incentivization mechanism, and how we are creating it. Token economies, what's the differences? Are we overlapping with these like greedy mechanisms? Like for example, there's examples of central bank moves that change society's way of like organizing drastically, like Volcker shock in 1970s. They just cut down all the inflation, and the society's alignment has changed. So this is centralized agencies doing some sort of token engineering in a way. So how we are
Yeah.
doing it, and
Yeah.
what's the difference of our approach, kind of discussion will be very fruitful to me. Like
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't come up to my mind. It will be silly. Like please say it very honestly. Like
No,
I'm not
no,
offended.
no, perfect. And I see how number one, it is basically and that's the game theory part of the um, game theory psychology part of, or a lot, basically Durgadas health, if you will, right? The whole humanities part. And token economy actually is something that goes back to Marian
Give you a big example I talk about, if you'd like.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Cynefin before. Okay, so there are kind of two things of Cynefin that I like to show: the fun version of this, and then sort of the technical version of this, right? So I think
If
what we're looking
we,
at.
yeah. So before we go into the models, though, because
Mhm.
otherwise we're not going to go to the
Sorry.
agenda, or what agenda? I mean, I'd love to have move on, have a progress on what's next for the focus groups. Okay,
Mhm.
but what I just wanted to suggest is that we tell Matt, no, you're totally right.
Yeah.
So he knows he can come to you.
Yeah.
And also another thing I want to point out is basically social engineering, this engineering of behaviors, right? That's definitely also one of the ethics principles. So if
Mhm.
Matt, you can put that on the agenda on our topics or bucket list, and also follow on now when we go through the topics that we have. Um, whether you see um, one topic where it also relates to, but this one here is definitely how do we go about yeah manipulating behaviors through incentives. Do we as token engineers know what we're doing? And also again, do the participants know what how they are being incentivized and what that will mean? That is exactly your research, right?
Yeah.
And whether it's something different than current systems are doing, or old wine in new bottles. So definitely topic. I just wanted to also show the links to those sessions that will be designed by Durgadas and by Manu, and having a deeper research topic. Again, anyone who raises their hands and joins in and creates such a resource, it will be definitely connected to the other parts that we are doing, as Durgadas mentioned, and here as well. So definitely a yes. Okay.
Yeah. So I have a good answer for his question whenever it's appropriate.
Mhm. Okay. So anyone else? And Mart, a question back. Do you see it as so the focus group is more about getting participants and having them discuss a topic, or would that, do you see that as part of a research group, a focus group, or did you say research group as in, you know, we go and collect mm, research and data on that topic and just
I think
collect it somewhere?
I think it can be both. For example, like in our commons upgrade, we have discussed what conviction, how long we want our conviction vote will be. So while I was thinking about conviction voting, for example, I was thinking, was long conviction voting keep people to be more stubborn in the, like, if there's
Mhm.
more scaled proposal, like there's a bunch of proposals there, you wanted to vote different ones, but since the conviction voting is long, you wanted to be stubborn that your vote matters more, kind of vibes. Maybe like I couldn't formulate well, but so we can discuss these parameters across space or within TC as like, what do you think? For example, is long conviction voting having any form of effect on our like decision making, or what's that? Is it beneficial for our society? Like, I think this can be a good topic for focus group as like discussion.
Yeah,
It
I
can be.
see. And it needs some research before, so we have some examples, right? But it can be also
Yeah, it needs some research. For sure.
Well, and the thing is that the concern that I have is that what is the approach that we're going to be advocating? So if we just say, I'm going to start with a question like the one you just asked, right? Conviction voting, this way or that way, right? What we tend to do then is to adopt the binary governing constraint idea that I was going to kind of explain in terms of just orienting yourself in terms of that. So, there's research, but there's also sort of overriding principles that I think we want to make sure we're working within, so that we can contextualize our behavior to know in which direction does this lead us. Do you know what I'm saying? So if I'm saying that I'd like to do research into this, well, are my assumptions good? Or is there another model in which I can contextualize this to? And a lot of my work is to be able to show how the connectors are between varying mental models and the different ways in which you can effectively contextualize your work, right? So I'm hoping that as a group we'll try to be rigorous in terms of looking at that sort of thing first, right?
And that's again your second session, this intro to mental models and decision-making frameworks, and
exactly
that I think exactly. And then the second one is when we do choose. Have we challenged our assumptions enough? So I think this will go well. This will go well together. Yeah. Which directions also links to the practice sessions. Okay. Good. Yeah. How do we form our assumptions? Where do they come from? Questioning those are very hard, and yeah, that's this rabbit hole that then leads to the inside journey.
By the way, I can't see your shared screen.
You cannot see it?
No, I just see the squares.
Yeah, it's stuck on loading.
Sorry about that. I'll try again, stop sharing, but I'm editing live.
Sure.
One
well,
document.
In some ways, I also just want to make sure that not only do we have groups about that, but if a person's engaged in a live decision-making exercise, I want them to know that there are people that they can come to say, what is the best way in which to contextualize this? Can I give your feedback? Type of thing. I know Manu talks to me about that type of thing. So it might be great to have like here people are kind of not gravitons, but like omegatrons or something where we'd be available, for people like as contextualizers or whatever. So
that brings us to what is the underlying what we will provide here in the working group, or while we're around in Token Engineering Commons. Okay, so basically I put it here as topic number 5, and just edit you. Please do give more context. That's definitely something close to be honest, and it also plays well with, at the very least, 2 of the practice sessions and at least 2 of the T ethical principles that we have identified already. So that could be a good next topic, to be honest, Matt. Hi, Lydia, you're there. Lydia, can you hear me? I don't know. Sometimes the audio of. Hi, Lydia. Do you want to say hi shortly, because I had introduced you already?
Yes.
That you helped us
Sorry,
with.
Yes. Hey, everyone. Yes, I'm a bit late, and I'm also not really so much updated about the, let's say, the focus group development. I just read like your document, and I think it's really like great work what you have been doing. And I don't know, maybe I was just thinking what for me, like maybe as a question, I also don't know if you already discussed this, but it's a bit like what are you doing with the data or the findings that like has been created? Like who's going to analyze it, and also interpreting, and also what are like what we call like research outputs. I mean, I see it's like this idea of like this ethics generating, but I think also that your topics go far beyond it. I think it's also something that should be, if like in this form of participatory action research, it should be also monitored and asked constantly. And like also like I was wondering, we're doing the survey, last year, like what happened with the survey, and I mean also how you are planning to integrate the survey with the focus groups. Is there like some kind of approach, like looking in like both? And the third thing I wanted to say, it's about like a potential topic of focus groups. I'm still, yes, because I'm not really updated. But yeah, I think I already told you I would be interested, maybe let's say, because I'm interested in the topic of conflict and conflict research, and yeah, maybe looking into, let's say, which kind of conflicts existing, but also how conflicts are solved, or like because I know also you have this conflict management group, and but yes, this is an idea of mine. I don't know if it like fits in the interest. Like, I think
Yeah,
maybe
we
I
can
still
talk
need to
about
like
that.
think a bit more and elaborate a bit more out. Yes, I think
Yeah, just connect with
Definitely.
me
what I wanted to say for
offline.
the moment.
So, just picking up your questions one by one, Durgadas and Juan. Juan is the steward of Gravitons, where the Token Engineering Commons protocol for conflict resolution emerged. And Durgadas is also one of those who started contributing, shaping it in the beginning. And as you see, they're also very active participants in Omega. So I think Omega is really about, the outcome should be token engineering ethical principles that we have collectively researched, if you will, or that really comes out of our observation in our work and in our experiences as token engineers and participants in token economies. That's the goal, and definitely it starts because everything is decision making, and every decision and opinion or perspective can potentially lead to conflict. That's why I think those are definitely connected. What in Omega, I think, or in my view, that's my personal view, or my gut feeling, I must say, is how do we how can we get to a point where we see conflicts before emerging, or even this situation when those two people are entirely on different levels or worldviews, or they're talking like this and they don't even know they have a conflict, for example. And especially in these very diverse communities that global token networks are trying to coordinate, that's mostly the case. So that's why we started with these 8 worldviews, and that's also coming in. Again, maybe I just give you, while I'm telling what happened with since you helped us with those 2 other questions, maybe Juan, Durgadas, and also Lydia, you can gather a bit of your thoughts, how such a focus group about conflict identification, resolution, and is there something before, like if we come from contextualized, open, and generative ways, can we avoid conflict? Like, can there be peace before war? But the number 1 question, community survey, what happened with it? Well, it was a very short, small survey with a few participants. So I would say, and then we basically moved on to, okay, let's have these focus groups and find our ways. In my view, now that we have started to actually, even from that very haphazardly done first iteration of this, I think we're producing something that is of value to the engineers, as well as through and together with them. And I think just that story, when we share that, and people are really appreciating the practice sessions and so on, I can imagine that there will be momentum around this, that more people participate in these community surveys and they see what is the outcome of it. I do believe that. Do we have the capacity, really brain-wise and people-wise, to handle those surveys with the care and attention that they deserve? I would say not really. So again, if you to actually support this, and one of the topics that we have in Token Engineering Commons that's in what we want to achieve is now, very, very, it's our omega. So that's why I would say these are the exact questions. If you can help us as social scientists to help, I think we would find ways to actually also support that appropriately. What is the outcome? Again, as I had mentioned, the Omega Working Group has just one job. That's just figuring out the ethos of this very diverse community and token engineering ethics. But again, Matt is one of the newer contributors, for example, and even he sees that there is actually a lot of adjacent topics that is going to come out of this initial question. So yeah, I think it would be great to have really an anthropology research alongside this token engineering development. And the focus groups, as I mentioned, we have only had one, just one focus group. This one about ethical dilemmas. What we did was one call chat. I facilitated a little bit. These were the participants. You can listen in And then we tried an analysis of it. But actually what happened was through successive working group sessions, those topics that we heard and tried to crystallize came again and again, so that we could actually form these 4 ethical principles, and we can tie them back to that focus group. And we have these practice sessions that we then came up through all of those working group exchanges. So I would say it was a very organic, fluid application that we did in our creative way. But it would be, of course, fantastic if we can form the next focus groups accordingly. Okay, that was the background. Now coming to, could that be a focus group topic around conflict? Durgadas and Juan, what do you say? Would that be a topic you are also interested in the working group gravity? Would that be useful? Shall we just go for it and do one?
Well, I mean, I think we've got a pretty clear framework, now. Like if you look at, for example, this is a pretty complex and integrated thing, so it's part of our ethical principle to try to make sure that we get principles back up of conflicts, conflicts, and trust creation. We are something. Go off. Yeah, it's basically pretty well known. So we think each one of these 4 principles is a huge thing that you could find some investment in, whatever you care for there, Lydia.
So to maybe,
I think I sent you this.
To maybe push things forward, pardon me, Durgadas, but I notice I've got a lot of very directive energy, especially around the 4th topic about enabling informed participation. Like if I just think about that, like the fountains of fireworks like shoot out of my heart, right? And I have a question about what is the intended outcome? I understand that there is this desire to distill ethical principles. So are we hoping to engage in an exploration around the topic, or are we hoping to realize the outcome that is to enable informed participation?
Well, I think it seems to me that we're trying to do both of those things, and to find out in which instances it's appropriate to create what would essentially be a governing constraint on the one hand, and then an enabling constraint on the other hand. And those are done differently depending on which direction you're talking about. So the graphic I was talking to you about before around, Cynefin, contains that stuff somewhat, which I can, so this thing here, this thing between the complex and the complicated, a governing constraint means that you're gonna eventually get through and model and then make repeatable and then automate what you're talking about. That's basically completes that cycle. So you've got a chaos, you don't know what's going on, you experiment on it, and then you decide on what kind of constraint you're getting to. So if you're doing an enabling constraint, that means you're going to put it up into this thing, you're going to standardize it and then to some degree take bits of it here. But really the intention of an enabling constraint is to then come back to the complex and maybe even go to the chaotic in that situation, where the intention of a governing constraint would be to go in the other direction, right? So there's a directional aspect to this that we can talk about too. So anyway, so that's generally the way that I like to make sense of that.
Jeremy, do you know how to engage, or do you have question around that? Do you you say
I'm
error?
So I find myself with a lot of diffuse energy going in a lot of different directions, right? And the continued sensation of liminality is sort of getting to me, right? And so what I am really hoping for is some sense of direction, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, and we call that complexity tolerance.
Totally, yeah. And we've popped my cherry, right? We've blown my circuit, right?
But interesting, you mentioned
that's a side
energy.
thing of this group.
So the newest edition. The newest edition, I would say, is coming actually from George, who is just listening as a social scientist too. That's also what I picked up. They're really very observant, but I gotta tell you, just by being observer, you are already part of the system and doing stuff with it. So
yeah. Well, I may have something to contribute about the question of conflict. Well, maybe just a question that do you guys differentiate creative friction and conflict?
Wow, nice, thank you.
Because creative friction comes from people are standing in the same worldview, standing in the same value system. They even appreciate each other. They don't have anything against each other. But as two professionals, they offer different solutions to a given challenge. And that is a creative friction. Something more interesting can come out from it. And conflict may have many different sources. Not infrequently, conflict sources are personal matters, sometimes personality, egos, and there are a couple of beautiful ways of working with them. Some of them come from the Native American tradition, actually, that I was trained in. And but I guess I just stopped here. And another topic that I may contribute to later would be the interpretation of self-sovereignty and what is needed for a person to be sovereign. And Jordan Hall and Daniel Schmachtenberger did some pretty good work about it that at some point again I will be happy to bring to the group. Because I feel that we need sovereign people, and sovereignty is not in a political sense that we don't have a ruler above us, but having the capability of sentience, intelligence, and agency. And there are many practices related to all this, but I just stopped here for now.
And that's for me, and I'm sorry, please jump in, everyone. You know that I tend to talk. but please jump in. But that is the main direction, if you will, right? Self-sovereignty, as in not your keys, not your crypto, but just having your private space. Like, do you know how to be self-sovereign? Do you know how to be self? Where is the self and self-organization? And we came to some things that came up in Omega until now, is this connections with self-knowledge. Like, without knowing yourself, how can you participate? Without having found a direction for yourself, saying, these are my values, this is how I align. How can you be aligned, value aligned in a global community? Super big questions, no, but definitely I think we are all game. We want to figure that out. So if you want to share, we're coming almost to an end, but that's definitely a cliffhanger. And I also want to, maybe we closed almost with that, is I wanted to say what you had brought in just past week, I would say, into token engineering, in my view, was this, the enlivenment theory and how you apply it to social change. And again, enliven self, I believe that's a very interesting addition to it all, and that goes back to, or that goes down to the roots, if you will, when the cypherpunk ethos brought in self-sovereignty, and people are reading this book and try to figure out, what does it mean? I have my keys now, what now? So, and that seems really to be the core of it. That you start, that one can and shall start. It's a good start, and how that this depiction actually challenged me was, as token engineers coming from systems thinking, we want to change the system, make it better, or design and redesign it. So we start with systems, right? And now more and more, with more coordination happening, really, people are realizing just to have a key and an account and have a smart contract and have things to manage, and have an infrastructure even that might work, which isn't really perfect, right? Even then, there will be a lot of human space where deliberation happens, where direction needs to be found, and we're not going to get that from some algorithms. And if so, basically, again, we go back to Yuval Harari. If all the decisions are taken by algorithms, and until now we understood our human existence as the drama of decision making, what kind of existence will we have? And there we don't have any philosophies. We're philosophically bankrupt. And that's how this whole journey basically started. And I think that's almost a little circle that closes, a little loop that closes here. And definitely, George, if you want to participate and share anything that would create some direction here, or how we could make use of it, how do we embed it? Do we start with a focus group, etc.? How does it play to the other focus group topics that we have? I mean, we didn't even go through the ones that we had, but we just added 2 more, which I think are interesting and important. One thing I would love for all of us to do is just to go over these again, and maybe we find some overlaps, or maybe we can reframe a focus group. That would be my ask for all of us. But other than that, do we have a yes? Lydia, could you imagine to continue support us or start again? And George, especially with respect to how do we conduct these focus groups better?
Yeah. From my side, I am super into continuing developing and researching more and going deeper in conflict management and in conflicts overall. So I can like